Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and for you all for being here as well on this evening as it gets a little chilly in Houston, a little cold. I always think it's fun, I guess, fun or funny, when something happens in my day that just brings the message that I'm about to bring right home. And today I was putting everything in my bag. I had my talk, I had the bowl, I had my phone, my bag, all the things, my tea, all the things. And I shut the door and I go, oh, keys, no keys, they're there and I'm here and they're there and I'm here, and and I'm doing that thing, and I call my husband and he comes from Deer Park and he comes and gets me, and I recognize in that moment I could beat myself up a lot and get very stressed and very high-strung, and or I could practice my song to the trees in the cold. So I did, and it was really nice because the trees were very receptive. They seemed to really enjoy the song. They were swaying in the wind and kind of in rhythm, and so reminded me of the practice of instant forgiveness. If we can forgive in the moment, it takes a lot of baggage away that we might carry and build up, and I know that from experience as well. So the song that I shared is a Stephen Schwartz song. You may not know his name, but you may be familiar with some musicals that he's written. He wrote Wicked, very popular show, Pippin, Godspell, which is the parables of the Gospel of Matthew. There's a line in this song, it's not from any musical, just a ballad that he wrote. There's a way to rise above if I look at them with love. And that's what I believe is what Jesus is teaching in and through the Lord's Prayer, in and through the statement we're going to be looking at tonight. We've been doing this series, Setting a Trap for God, looking at the Aramaic understanding of Jesus' teaching of the Lord's Prayer, Aramaic being the original language in which he spoke, looking at this prayer as a blueprint for a way to rise above, to lift our consciousness up, to rise above the struggles, the hurts, the heartaches, and return our awareness to the awareness of God, which is our true nature. Setting the Trap for God, Rocco Errico, the author, he says that each line of the Lord's Prayer is an attunement. It's an attunement for our consciousness. And so this is the sixth line. It's the sixth attunement. I love that, how he uses that word, that we're tuning up our consciousness to God consciousness. And that's the spiritual law working in and through the language of these words. And so the sixth attunement is this: Wash woklan halbain akana dap hanan shwakwan lahayawain. It's a long one this time. And it is forgive us our offenses as we forgive our offenders, is one translation direct from the Aramaic. He also offers us this: free us from our offenses as we have freed our offenders. Another translation is untie or release us from our offenses as we have released our offenders. So this word halbain literally means debts. In Aramaic, it serves as a metaphor for different words: sin, error, guilt, fault, offense, mistake, transgression. So there's quite a bit of a depth of meaning there beyond just like a financial debt. There's also guilt, fault that we've held another in or ourselves, a mistake, just a mistake that has been made, an offense, a transgression. And shuakwan translates as forgive or pardon, and it also carries some other meanings. To free, remit, untie, loosen, release. And it carries this idea of being free and canceling the debt. So forgiveness frees us. It frees us from any errors that we've made and from those committed against us. And so we get to start fresh and new on a new path as we let this go. I thought this was a perfect week for this topic because Saturday is Halloween. Sunday is the Day of the Dead. It's the beginning of the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. I brought my painted skull for Dia de los Muertos. I put it up on the altar to honor this time. It's a perfect time to talk about ghosts. So when I think about forgiveness and unforgiveness, I think about how those thoughts come into my consciousness of something I may be harboring against someone. And it's kind of like a ghost. It's kind of like it's haunting me. It's coming in. It's like, ooh, that person, they did you wrong. You know, do you have that experience ever with those? It's like it just pops in there. You see something makes you think of someone. Remember that? Wasn't that bad? Or yourself, something you did, and you start condemning yourself. And it kind of feels like you're haunted by these thoughts because they're just hanging around and floating around us. And the good thing to know, at least the way that I feel about ghosts and Halloween, is that, they're not real. They don't have any real power, right? And they represent some remnant of the past, some life that existed. And so this haunting thought, this ghost, represents some remnant of the past, which is really gone. It doesn't actually exist anywhere, except in our memory, and maybe some information that's in places, but mostly in the memory we have, which is always partial. We always remember our side, our experience, what happened to us, our emotions. It lives on in our minds as our impression. And what's also fun is that sometimes these offenses can fly in, like a ghost flies in, through the TV, like watching the news. Something flies in and you get triggered. Oh, you're offended. Or I'm offended by something that was said, and then it really gets me. Oh, that person believes this. I don't believe that. They're wrong. I'm right. And we can get into this resistance and resentments. There are lots of things to get offended by these days. The pandemic, how people are responding to it or not responding. The election, how people are voting or not voting. Or your own choices offend people by just letting them know what you did. Just seems to be something that's up now in the energy. People are saying, the energy is just really high now with the intensity of all that's happening. And you can walk around feeling offended and hurt and sorry for yourself. Or you can use this process to return to God consciousness, to live in the love that sees no separation. Jesus' primary teaching was kingdom consciousness, God consciousness, and then really the next greatest teaching that he gave was on forgiveness. He really emphasized this quite a bit in his ministry. He was able to forgive what seemed to be unforgivable. the men who nailed him painfully to the cross. We have Jesus here risen and whole and joyful. That's how we see that through that forgiveness, he recognized that forgiveness was necessary for his resurrection. The resurrection was not going to come if he hung on to his human anger and desire for revenge or anything like that was harbored within him. The resurrection was not going to unfold. So consider for yourself tonight, what is necessary for your resurrection from whatever situation may be haunting you? Whatever might be lingering in your consciousness, what is necessary for your resurrection to let that go so you can be free? Be free. In Aramaic, the word gospel translates to joyful message. Joyful message. When we forgive, we return to our natural joy. That is what Jesus is leading us into. Return to your natural joy. And the path is this path of healing that we're engaging in doing this powerful forgiveness work. When we look at nature, nature always moves towards healing. You notice that if you cut your finger, that your finger will start to heal. The blood will work to coagulate, that it will work to get the blood flow to begin to fight off the infection, begin to start healing, no matter what caused the cut. No matter whether you cut yourself on purpose, somebody else cut you, and you didn't want that to happen. Whatever it was, whatever the story was, the body just moves to healing. It doesn't stop to assess if the cut is worthy of healing. It just moves to healing. This is the natural way. So when there's a transgression with people, something that happens, we don't immediately move in the natural way that we were designed to move into healing and forgiveness. We can move into separation and further and create even further pain for ourselves in that situation. And the teaching is to forgive as soon as possible. Now, the master teacher understood that in our human lives, we would have mistakes, we would have weaknesses and faults. And so he taught this practice of forgiveness, knowing that we would need it regularly to restore and heal relationships. I mean, we know forgiveness is always possible, though at times it can seem unimaginable. It's always inspiring to me to know about the healing of forgiveness that Jesus did on the cross. And as I was thinking about this unimaginable forgiveness, I was thinking about another Broadway musical that I got to see, courtesy of the pandemic, that it was released on Disney+, Hamilton. Have you guys seen Hamilton, the musical? Any of you guys seen it? Karen's seen it. Thank you, Karen. David? Yes? Okay, cool. Well, see it if you can. It's on Disney+. I get no residuals from plugging that. But anyway, it's a good show, as we all well know. And in Hamilton, there is a song in the second act, and it's called It's Quiet Uptown. And what happens in this point of the story, so this musical is a story of Alexander Hamilton. And at this point in the story, Alexander Hamilton's son has been shot. He's been murdered in a duel. And Alexander Hamilton has been exposed for cheating on his wife. And he has left, he was in Washington, D.C. He left his political position and returned to New York. They moved uptown, and he is working to reconcile with his wife, Eliza, who has become, they're both overcome with grief of the loss of their son. as well as him asking for her forgiveness for having cheated on her. And you see them in the depths of despair, and they're walking around uptown, and it says it's quiet uptown, and the bystanders are watching them walk, and you just wonder if she could ever forgive him for all of that, because he has some blame in also the son's death and allowing the duel to happen and not kind of stepping in and that kind of thing. So there's that as well. And you see him asking for her forgiveness and walking through the streets, and he says, if I could change places with him and he could be here and I could be dead, I would do that. I would do that right now. And he just dedicates everything to just asking for her to try and just to allow him to stand beside her through this. And the passersby on the street are singing, and they're singing. They are trying to do the unimaginable. And that line, man, it really gets me. I was watching it, and I'm crying and going, musical got me again. Because you're watching it, and you go, it's just a story. It's very entertaining. It's wonderful. And then when it hits home, it's like, it just really touched me. Them going through this pain and doing the unimaginable. People would never expect they would get together after all that. And she just silently takes his hand, and then you know that there's healing there, and there's the possibility of them coming back together. So is there a situation in your life where forgiveness seems unimaginable? Let's know. Hold that in light. Know that there is a way to release and heal. Because when we forgive, in this statement that Jesus shares with us, that forgive us our offenses as we forgive our offenders, that there are two parts. We love the part, forgive us our debts, yay. No debts, forgive us anything that has been held against us. That's the great part, but as we forgive. And the important part to know in this statement is that there's no forgiveness in God. God sees us as whole and perfect. If there was sin and transgression and resentment in God, then God wouldn't be God. God is perfect love and peace and joy, and that is our true nature, right? And so we recognize that it's not God that we're asking to forgive us. It's really our own forgiveness of ourselves and our forgiveness of the other person that gets us back into the harmony of spiritual law, which allows us to see that person as the Christ that they are, as the light of God that they are, once again, returning us to our state of what Erico describes as our innocence, the love, the light that we are, and seeing them in that state as well. We want freedom, right? We want the freedom. That is no question about it. I want to be free from any resentments and things that I've been holding on to, but we don't always want to see the other set free. You ever heard, I forgive, but do I have to forget? Well, that's part of it, that you don't keep telling the victim story over and over again. So let's consider this, that well-intentioned person in our lives who might say, I forgive him, I forgive her, and then sometime later, they go on to a rant, complaining about that person, and you wonder, did they really forgive, or was it just lip service to forgiveness? Now that person who's continuing to rant, maybe ourselves, could have built up a debt against that other person. That is the debts. So not financial, a debt that it could be, or it could just be a debt that they expect something to the past to change. There's that quote, forgiveness is letting go of any belief that the past could be different. Letting go of any idea that that situation could be changed in the present from what it was. It happened, accepting that it happened, so that we cannot have any more ghosts of unforgiveness in our minds haunting our consciousness, so we can let go. Letting go of holding grudges. So grudges, they affect ourselves mentally, emotionally, and they can affect our bodies, which is why we went through that meditation of releasing. We don't always realize how our bodies hold things that we haven't processed or we haven't let go of. So that's another thing that's really powerful to remember when we're in a situation where we recognize we're triggered. We want to release that, not only for the process of forgiveness to come into our awareness of spiritual wholeness, but also for the health of ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. There is spiritual law. When I was taught how to pray for other people, we were taught that the person who's praying for the other person always receives the prayer first. And so you receive the blessing and you're giving them, basically like a copy that we send out of the consciousness of what we have become aware of in the prayer. Well, we do the same thing with forgiveness, that if we hold hate and resentment, we send out a copy of that into the universe, and we wonder why that comes back into our life and our experience. So did you ever notice how much energy it takes to carry anger and resentment? That for it to be held in your consciousness, held in your body, held in your experience, it takes a lot of energy. It works you up. And that forgiveness causes us to return to that natural state of joy, of peace, and tranquility. But why is it hard to forgive? It sounds easy. Somebody did something to us, or we did something, we asked for forgiveness, we forgive the person. The thing that makes it a challenge is that what we're experiencing in the moment of that is oftentimes anger. And anger is a very powerful emotion. We can feel it resonating in the body. It has a powerful energy. It's a basic human emotion. It's universal. We all have that experience of anger. And it just needs a proper channel to flow out of us. It does not need to be redirected to the person who sparked off the experience that triggered the anger, right? We can move it out of us in a healthy way so that we can have clarity. One step that Rocco Errico suggests, which is great, is therapy, talking it out until the energy of that anger is released and the emotional energy deflates. One thing, a practice that my spiritual director, Robert Brummett, gave to me to work with anger, because I noticed this year there's just been a lot of things globally that have been unfolding or in our country that have triggered that feeling, and I want to let it go. And he said he instructed me to sit with it and really feel it in the body. Where do you feel it in the body? What is the sensation of it? And then to just release a sound to let that energy out. Scream, a loud om, whatever it is. You might want to do it somewhere where you're not around other people. It's up to you. Go out in the woods if you can, but I'd like to do it in my home. And just let that energy out. And I notice as long as I hold it and let it out until the energy is done, and I feel like some real clarity. And it's very simple. Like, why did it have to be so simple? It's very simple, and which is beautiful. I love that about spiritual practice, that I could just let go of that energy and be in my sound mind, where I'm not acting out of my fight, flight, or freeze responses. I'm free of that, and I'm working in my higher level of thinking and consciousness. So a third way is when we've completely exhausted our resentments, like we get really tired of the story, telling the story again and again, and that is when oftentimes Spirit within awakens within us and reveals itself as love, and we're able to shift the consciousness that way. And sometimes other people don't care if you forgive them. They don't care, but we don't do it for them. It doesn't matter if they accept our forgiveness. We forgive for ourselves, because when we release others, we release the pain and the hurt that's in our emotional state. And we pay for the resentment that we carry. So if they've harmed us, why would we want to pay twice for that hurt? We can experience it, and we can forgive and not have to continue to be hurt by it. And there's this wonderful story I think of when I think of this process that I want to share with you, a Zen story. It's about a senior monk and a junior monk who are traveling together. And at one point, they come to a river that has a really strong current. And as the monks are preparing to cross the river, a woman comes up to them and asks to be carried across the river, because it's just she doesn't feel strong enough to walk across in that strong current, and asks if they could help her across to the other side. And the monks look at each other, because they've taken vows not to touch women at all. So, not sure what to do. Then without a word, the older monk picks up the woman, carries her across the river, places her on the other side of the river, and the junior monk comes with him, and then they continue on their journey. And that's it, nothing's said. So the younger monk could not believe what was happened. He was so offended. He joined with the senior monk, and he was just speechless. An hour passed by. Nothing was said. 2 hours passed by. 3 hours passed by. They're walking together. Nothing was said. And so finally, the younger monk blurted to the older monk. He said, "As monks, we're not permitted to touch a woman. How could you carry that woman across the river on your shoulders?" The older monk looked at him, and he replied, "Brother, I set her down 3 hours ago, but you are still carrying her." Forgive us our offenses as we forgive our offenders. Can we let go of that offense and be free? Jesus teaches us that forgiveness comes through forgiving others. And when we forgive others, that is how we learn the practice of self-forgiveness. There are times we can be harder on ourselves than we would even be on others, that we can think thoughts about ourselves that we would never say to another person. So it's important to use self-compassion as we work with self-forgiveness in this releasing process. Forgiveness releases our hearts, our emotions. There's this beautiful teaching in Unity that I want to close with, that I want to invite you into, if you dare, as we work to release any ghosts of unforgiveness that are lingering in our consciousness. And the teaching is this. It's a classic Unity teaching, that every night to sit for a half an hour and mentally forgive anyone that you hold any resentment towards. It may sound like a lot, but as you do it, and I've done this, it frees you up. It frees you and frees you so that whatever happened in the day is taken care of, and the next day is a new start. So I invite you into a healing, into a new start as you practice the power of forgiveness. Namaste.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.